Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So, we are Monochrome, and we'll talk about VR. I think it's a buzzword you have heard for many months now. This is our office, virtual office. And we are a small studio of 5 people based in Paris, and we create only a VR experience in real time. So, this is our showreel. It's a good way to introduce ourselves. So you can see the importance of working on the Z axis. So all these images are extract from all the experience we did for the last 2 years. So we think that VR, it's a new medium. It's more than a new technology. It's a new medium as much as important for us as the creation of cinema, photography, or something. And we think it's the crossroads of arts, branding, and gaming. So at Monochrome, we work on this free market. So for art, we produce virtual artwork with artists. So we position ourselves as a producer. For brands, we create a real-time experience mainly for events. And we also want to produce our own game. And what we want to do is to destroy the boundaries between this free domain. Because our vision is that in 5 years, for example, brand or art will have to create their own game to reach, for example, millennium targets. So we don't come from the 3D industry or gaming industry, we come from web design. And we started in our previous company called Ultranoir. We were mainly working on WebGL website. So it was 4 years ago. So what we'd love to do is to create immersive experience on website using the WebGL technology. So we create a game, we create a website with an illustrator called Macbeth. So for us, it was the good old time of web design, in fact. We tried to do websites of the Battle of Hoth from Star Wars. But 4 years ago, we were facing the uniformity of web design creativity. The fact is that the WebGL website, it was less than 0.5% of all the websites released every day. And our client just asked us, because of responsive design, because of social network, because of mobile website, more efficiency than creativity. So we ask ourselves what we're gonna do. And our third partner, which is not here today, just told us there is something happening in the States, and we ordered the first Oculus Rift headset, the DK1, and that's what we wanted to do. So we created Monochrome from Ultranoir 2 years ago, and over the past 2 years, now we know the pros and cons of VR. So we did around 5,000 user tests, because VR is mainly used for events. And the difference with website or apps is that you have a direct contact with your audience. So when the guy just removes the goggle, you can have a dialogue with him and say, what do you like, what do you don't like. So the first thing that the people really like is wonder. Wonder is something about childhood. But for example, we have tested the VR with people of 70 or 80 years old. And when they remove the headset, you see the sparkle in their eyes and the wonder. Of course, the main advantage of VR is space and time. So you can travel, you can go to space, you can't go in real life, or you can also travel in time. What we like to do is to have the user as a superhero with superpowers. Because if you do in VR the same thing as in reality, it doesn't make really sense. So what we're trying to do in VR is to give the user some superpowers. And for me, it's the ultimate step of interactivity. When I started the web 20 years ago, what I really liked, it was the interactivity. The interactivity is the dialogue between a user and an interface. And now, it's my opinion, but interactivity on social network, for example, is to share, to like, or to buy. But what is really the power of the user? There is a trend in marketing 5 years ago called co-creation. You have heard of this. The user is not only a buyer, is also a creator. But in VR, you can give this maximum interactivity to the user. The other things is memories versus oblivion. You know that you will consult your mobile between 50 to 300 times a day. So what is the quality of the user experience, and what do you remember? There were some scientific tests about VR, and the impact of VR at the memory is even deeper than the reality. So when you experience something in VR, you will remember it. What we also like is the real-time media. We work with Unreal Engine. You have probably heard about it with Fortnite game. And working in real time, it's this expression of interactivity, in fact. You have to know that in the next Star Wars, one scene of the film will be produced in real time. So that doesn't mean that it's pre-calculate images. It's really using the real time, and you can direct your actors virtually, in fact. As I said, it's really the difference between buyers and creators. So it's the positive things of virtuality. And the negative things is that for the moment, there is no B2C device. So that means that you cannot reach a mass market. The clients have always the same question. Who is equipped with a VR headset at home? But the answer is nobody. Because you will have some standalone headset released by Oculus Rift next year that will be cheaper, but who owns an Oculus Rift right now at home? It's mainly gamers. That's why the market in VR is mostly gaming. 95% of the content released on VR, it's games. The other thing is 360 videos, but this is another domain. The market is growing. There is more and more headsets sold every year, but for the moment we estimate around 50 million of headsets sold worldwide. So if you compare to the mobile market, it's very small. We also use VR only for events. When we work for brands, it's only for events, to entertain the events, to give another side of the brand, or to give something very innovative. But for the moment, we didn't publish one experience on the store downloaded by users, so it's only for events. On the store, you have few experience about brands. As I said, most experience are gaming. The other thing is not social, because our client, the first thing also that they ask us is, how do I share the experience that I live in VR? And for the moment, it's quite difficult to share this experience. The only thing that we do is we produce 360 video extract from our VR experience, and we publish it on YouTube or Vimeo. But from one source, one 3D source, you can produce this kind of video. You can also produce 2D video, And we also produce little GIF that you can share on the social network. Because the main difference is the URL versus the .exe. Because when you share something on the digital world, you can send a URL, it's very easy to share. When you want to share a VR experience, you have to download a file between 1 and 2 gigabytes. So just imagine it will take maybe between 10 minutes to download an experience, and you don't have a fast access to this experience. And the last thing is the 3D quality. The quality that we have now in VR is the same as you have on the console like PlayStation console 10 years ago. So it's the quality of the PS3, for example. So when you have the people now are used to a certain 3D quality, watching the Marvel movies or playing at games, and when they say the quality in the VR headset, they're quite disappointed, because the only difference is when you play a game, you have to render just one image, one 2D image on one screen. In VR, you have to render a 360 environment, 60 times per second. So that means that we spend a lot of time to optimize. So that's why there's a link with the WebGL, because WebGL is the same thing. You have to optimize all the time. And for the moment, in VR, it's the same thing.
So for you to understand all the different questions we are facing through virtual reality, we're going to showcase you a few projects we've been working on the 2 past years. So as JB said, we figured that VR was at the crossroad between brands, arts, and gaming. And as you're going to see, each time we have a new client, a new project, or a new collaboration, it's basically a new question and a new conception process that we have to develop. So here are a few examples for you to figure more all the different questions this new medium is asking. So let's talk first about the brands. And we're going to start with the project we did for Christian Dior. So the main question you could ask is why a brand like Christian Dior would ask for a VR experience. Basically, they're famous already, they're selling products, but they're facing a problem that a lot of huge brands, mostly in the luxury domain, are facing these years, is that basically these brands are famous because they have a huge history. Dior's is 70 years old. So they are famous because they have like a century of exploration and creation to present. But basically, with the new technology and the new social media, they are facing a problem is that if you work in web design, you know that in this kind of website, you always have a section, a folder called patrimoine or legacy. Basically, less than 1% of the visitors click on it. So all the legacy, all the heritage of the brand is literally disappearing. And it's even worse with social media because they all have the same format. For example, on Instagram, you can't differentiate a brand from another because basically they all have the same approach, like posting square visuals. So Dior contacted us because they wanted their history. So all the dresses of haute couture that they made and they don't present to people, they wanted to show them to the clients. So for this project, we used a technique called photogrammetry. So basically, we took like 50 cameras to shot the dresses, like to make a 3D scanning, and we were asked to make like a virtual museum in which each room is presenting the career of one designer. So we used this technique, and I don't know, for those who went in Paris last year, there was an exhibition of Dior for the 70 years of the brand, so this project was connected to this exhibition.
And this project was just made for the people who cannot go to the exhibition. So with the visual of the Dior eyes, they designed their own VR headset because they wanted it like a luxury object. They take these Dior eyes and the exhibition can travel all over the world.
You have to know that even inside Dior HQ, most of the people working at Dior never seen these dresses for their lives. So basically, this project was also presented in the Dior HQ. So that's it. We use VR to embody brands' value, such as legacy or history, but we can also think about poetry or art, especially everything that connects to emotions, actually. So this is the kind of render we figured to have. So this one, of course, we can't have this type of render in real-time 3D like Unreal Engine. So we make like a 360 video with stereoscopic. And we invented a new universe for each one of the dresses, corresponding to the different creatures. So the point was to give access to the unknown. And through VR, because we are working on new projects with Christian Dior for now, they want every time to open the gates of the unknown. So basically, this is the type of render we could have. we wanted to approach a realistic render. For example, for the John Galliano room, we played with the scales like in Alice in Wonderland. And we had to redesign in 3D all the basic codes of Dior. For example, the chairs, the furniture, the window.
In Dior, you have 7 art directors, starting with Christian Dior, and the actual art director is Maria Grazia Chiuri. So we designed one room for each director, and the design has been inspired by the main fashion show of each director.
Some people might think that putting all these elements in 3D could affect the nature of the elements, but the fact is that bringing the 3D culture for such a brand, it's also a new way to become a little bit modern and to explore all their data. So as you can see, well, we also designed the chimneys and all the elements. So basically, they are transferring all their data into 3D and into a virtual approach. This is the second project we've been working on. For those you know, there was a huge Adidas campaign last year called G-Rep. So it was like a sneaker looking like this with grid texture. And they asked us to make a VR experience based on the shoe. So let's have a look.
You took me for granted, girl. You took me for granted. Go to say down. Watch how she back it down. Watch how she down. Watch how she let the fire down. Yeah, you watch her back it down. She the finest girl I ever seen around. She did a couple hundred rounds. Shot for shot, I think I'm a
So just before JB was explaining you that VR can bring superpowers to the user, and it's the idea for Adidas. Basically, they want to switch the buyer to an actor. So here, as you saw, we focused on the grid, and we built like a virtual matrix around the product. And so basically, the user can change the appearance on the grid in a long traveling, and he can also interfere and gear up the experience and the different textures. So you gave him 2 powers to interact, and he has the impression to be curator of the brand and to build the brand himself too. So this is an example of the type of grid we've been on. And as you can see, we didn't even figure the product. So we focused on the superpowers and the brand codes, which is the grid, but we even forget about the product. We asked Adidas, is it possible not to figure the shoe? And they were like, okay. So we went on it, and as I was saying, VR focuses on the universe more than the product. We were not the only ones to work on this experience. Actually, it was a big event in Louvre. We were like 11 studios, and each one has to bring a reinterpretation of the campaign, based on the grid, of course. But this is super interesting to see that now the brands, thanks to VR, scenography, or other domain, they let the creators express themselves and reinterpret the universes of the brand.
So that means that the brand become itself an art curator. For this project, all the projects we have done on web design, the clients say more blue, less red, this kind of like change this, and the strategy of Adidas is to take the opposite of that, become an art curator, and give all the freedom to the creators to play with the code.
And actually, what is impressive is that this event was like happening in the Louvre, and we discovered that VR makes sense through reality. Even us at the beginning, we were thinking like, okay, putting a VR headset is going to isolate yourself. So basically, you're going to be locked up in your bedroom and not seeing the light for hours and days. But no, everything happens outside. As the VR market didn't really started, if you want to test VR, you have to go outside of your house. So basically, you can see the crowd. It was like a concert with Justice, The Blaze and stuff. And all around there was like, in the middle, you could have different points of access of interactive process. And it was super funny to see that the people could listen to the sound around and dance in the club with a VR headset on their head. And it was like a super good mix for us to see that VR is not something that's going to isolate people.
We were a bit afraid because the audience of this event is 1,000 worldwide top influencers. So our fear was to, okay, VR, I have seen, I've been sick, so that. But now we are at a stage at VR, it's the content that matters. And they really like the experience, and that was the only thing that count. It was not talking about VR or something, but what kind of experience can you offer to me?
Last brand project we're going to present is for a new aerial company. Basically, it's people that buy giant planes and convert it into big private jets. So the company is not existing yet. So they contacted us to launch a new brand identity. So we come from web design and print. So basically, we could prepare the identity, but for the client to project into the brands, we used VR. So let's have just a quick look at a video. No. Just after.
Because to create a new airlines company, even it's a very private company, it takes 5 years. Once you have the ID, the time you need to buy the planes to launch the company, it's 5 years. So how to make your brand exist between the kickoff and the final launch?
So VR for us is also a new tool to prototype reality. And what is super funny is that when you show a VR concept to a client, for example, he can project himself into the future of the brand and he can totally trust you. So basically what happened is that we designed black planes, well called Monochrome, so we decided to make planes black and white. And we also designed the interior of the plane. And we improvised ourselves like plane designers just because we wanted the client to project inside.
So we also work with the plane constructor, which is Aubert. But what is really great with VR is that the buyer, the guy who did the check to create this airline, so he put the VR glasses and he had the feeling he has already his plane. And then we provide him with tools so he can change materials, colors, and something. So that's why it's really a great tool to design an upcoming reality.
And the other cool thing is that VR offers a multitude of points of view. In the experience we show to the client, it could be behind the plane, so see the plane in an anti-ray. Basically, it was a flight between Moscow and Paris, so you were following the plane. So you could be behind the plane, on the side, watching like some kind of city in the background, and you can switch with the controller. You could even switch to the interior and basically discover your future plane and your future brand in several angles.
What is very important with this kind of project, when you launch such a project, which is a super jet company, you need your customer before you launch the brand. You need a bundle of a customer because the price of the ticket is very high. And the only way to sell your company, if you show them a print brochure or website, but the VR really help to sell the product.
So this is all for the brand part, and you're going to see that with the art domain, we managed to develop several other answers for the use of VR. So basically, this is a museum that doesn't exist. His owner is called Sylvain Lévy. He's one of the biggest collector of Chinese contemporary art in Paris, and he would like to have his own museum, but he cannot buy him, so he wanted to reunite all these pieces. And the point is that this guy is collecting XXL pieces. Basically, the artwork he's buying are so huge that they can't fit inside museums. So he wanted to reunite all his collection, and he presented a virtual museum that we designed, where the art pieces that we exhibit are, of course, real art. So we had to redesign all the sculptures in 3D. For the paintings, it was more simple because it was like 2D images. And the cool thing is that this museum is now exhibited in museums all over the world. So the museum becomes an art piece in a way. So I'm going to explain you in detail. So yes, the point was to exhibit pieces that cannot be exhibited in the museum. So we choose like 30 artists because the collection is way bigger than this. And we, with their authorization, of course, we redesigned the sculptures in 3D and we put them in a museum we designed ourselves. So let's talk about the user experience. It's like a museum, as you can see, which is totally open. So basically, at the opposite of the classical exhibition, you don't have to follow a certain path to go to see the different artworks. You can go whatever you want, whenever you want. And you can change your point of view. So basically, you can have like the size of a human and switch to a gut view to have better impressions. So this is the type of painting which are like 12 meters long that are exhibited in this museum.
This painting has been shown only 2 times in reality, because the painting is so huge that you have to find the museum or the art galleries to exhibit it.
This is the golden stairs which adapt to the structure of each museum it's exhibited in. So basically, in most of the case, it's in small rooms. So here, we could really express the intention of the artist. And as you can see, the gut view allow yourself to see the structures from another point of view. And the last cool thing with this project is that we managed to break the frontier between art and video game. In which goal? Because we wanted to enlarge the audience to reach the younger people. Basically, as I told you, this museum, this virtual museum, is exhibited in museums in China, in America, and in France. And what we figured is that for the people to walk into the museum, we plugged like Xbox controllers, and we saw all the kids coming to test the museum, and it was the first time that we saw kids spending 20 minutes in a museum, actually. So it's like enlarging the audience, and through VR, we figured that kids can have a new approach and be interesting on art. So basically, it's even developing their own curiosity.
Because there is 2 exhibits right now in Paris. One is Team Lab. They opened a museum in Japan, and Atelier de Lumière, and it's projection on wall. And the audience is not the audience that you find in Palais Tokyo or normal museum, because it's immersion. So when the kids have a pad like a PlayStation and they are in 3D, they have this feeling that they are in a game, but they spend between 30 to 1 hour in the museum. The only thing I wanted to add is that when Sylvain asked us to design this building, we are not architects. So the building, if you build it in reality, is, I don't know, 700 meter long and 50 meters high. So the first building that we designed, you didn't felt this impression of length, and then so that's why you have some human-sized people inside, just for your eyes to understand the scale of the whole building. And at the beginning of the process, we even ask a real architect to help us, because the law of VR is the same as reality when you talk about lights, reflection, and so that. But the problem of the architect was to forget his own knowledge, because he told us, for example, you can't build that because the column is too thin or something like that. So it was interesting to people working in the real life in the domain and facing him with the possibility of VR.
Each time we improvise ourselves, like doing a new job, for example, becoming plain designers of architects. After we meet people working in this domain, so it's basically a nice exchange which is coming each time, and for this too, VR is developing curiosity. And of course, for a second version of this museum that you can find on Steam already, I think, we're going to add the interaction with the art pieces. Basically, you're going to be able to take the art piece and to modify it. So this is like one of the structure, one of the installation of the museum that basically is usually exposed like this. So normally you have this point of view, and in this version of the museum, you can even go behind the columns, take the bones, throw it, and becoming like, and yeah, that's what we were saying about the art becoming like basically closer to the video games.
But it's not very easy for the artist, because the artist like this barrier between the work and the audience. In VR, you have no more barrier. So our difficulty is to find artists to play the game. So it's a huge step for them to break the wall between the artwork and the audience.
But we see that VR is totally changing the way the artists approach their own art. So basically, for now, the artists, they don't want to share their techniques. And we figured the opposite with this next project. I don't know if you know this artist. He's a Chinese artist called Liang. He does super high paintings, approximately this size, and it's like screen. So it's a mix between video projection, mapping, texturing, 2D elements. So he contacted us because he wanted to make his first painting in virtual reality. And for us, it was amazing because he basically shared all his secret techniques with us. So this is what the final result looks like. It's an art piece in VR that you can basically see in several museums now. It was already exhibited in Paris in a gallery called Paris Beijing. So as I'm going to explain you, we designed it with him, and it was like a totally new process of creation to reproduce a 2D image in 3D.
Well, his work is based on the
Chinese estampe, yeah.
Chinese landscape of the 11th century. So it's very, very slow, in fact.
So it was the opportunity for us to translate a universe of an artist into a VR art piece. And for this, we used a lot of techniques. So for example, at the beginning, we tried to reproduce his techniques, but the result wasn't here. So to communicate with him, he was in China and we were in Paris, we used a software called Tilbrush. I don't know if you heard about it. Basically, it's a software that allows you to paint and to draw in virtual reality. So this guy was sending us Tilbrush empty files with only small elements, like for example, a cube. And he was like in VR, putting a cube, saying, I want this mountain here, I want this fountain, this cascade like this, etc. So basically, we exchange and we communicate inside a virtual software to create a virtual art piece.
Well, because when the 3D elements start to show up, he can have all the scene around him, taking Tilbrush to say, this I don't want. So it can be translated to any lot of domains like architecture or design object and so on.
At the beginning, we only used 3D elements, but he explained us through Tilbrush that his paintings was a mix of 2D textures. He also was taking, for example, all the fountains that you saw in the video are extracted from YouTube videos. So it's a real recut and patchwork technique that he transmitted to us, and it was the first time for us to become the arms of an artist in a way, and it was a totally new discovery for us to co-create an art piece with VR.
But the fact is that at the beginning of the project, the guys just want, okay, I have this 2D file, just transform it in 3D. But when we start the process, of course, it became an history because you have all the animation and all the a storyboard, in fact. So from his first objective, it has been transformed into a real VR piece. Because, for example, Jeff Koons did a VR artwork. He just takes something that exists in reality and put it in VR. And I think with such process, there is not a lot of interest.
Because you have your image, and you have to imagine what's on the side, what's up, what's on the floor, what's behind. You also have to imagine the sound design, and it's a super good problematic because you're asked to make, in a way, the soundtrack of a painting, which is a totally new approach for art, and more artists are using VR as a new medium, as a new support for their creativity.
But we met some huge fans of Long artwork, And when we put the VR headset, and instead of watching an artwork, being in the middle of the artwork, it was really a strong emotion.
Once again, this takes place outside. So VR becomes an art piece, so you can find it in museums, as I told you. And VR makes sense when it's surrounded by other elements, like in a scenographic approach. For example, if you just put a computer and a headset, the immersion is not here, because the VR experience is the heart of the experience. But before that, you have to imagine like a path for the user to dive into virtual reality. So as you see, when the spectator is surrounded with other art pieces, this takes a lot of sense. And as you saw in the video, it was a non-interactive experience. Basically, you have a 9-minute scenery which is evolving in front of you, and you're just like watching in a contemplative approach. This is what he wanted actually, because he wanted through VR that the spectator had the same impression than being in front of a more classical painting.
It's the same for events. Now, the VR that we do for event is a huge part of the global scenography. If you have just a VR headset in the middle of the corner, there is no real interest, in fact.
So this is Pauline Dufour. She's a French artist and a friend of us, and she's using VR since 2014. So we made a few collaborations with her. It's always a good opportunity for us to test new VR experiments, and for her too. So basically, she's a tilt brush designer. She used the software I was telling you about a few minutes ago to design and reproduce her drawings into VR. So basically, she was working with ink before, now she's working with painting, and she's developing and readapting her techniques through VR.
So just we have a gallery in Paris, so if you are in Paris, we'll be happy to welcome you and to show you our experience.
So the process of this experience, the last one we did with Pauline Dufour, was to create a dialogue between reality and virtuality. As you can see, she has a headset, and on the background you can see prints. These prints are extracted from the VR experience. The purpose was to create a link from the physical to the immaterial, to the physical, to the immaterial, to the physical, to the immaterial. So basically, she started drawings like blue jungles with pens and ink on paper. Then she reproduced this blue jungle in VR. And after that, she could move inside the structure and choose the angle. And from this different angle and captation, she was producing posters and different prints like this. She even made a book, so it was interesting to see that the creative process for once was starting into virtual reality.
It's also a huge step for art, because you have one virtual art, but you can have as many prints as views. So our basic idea was also that the user can select himself, yeah, I want this view. So this is also a huge step for artists. For the little history, when she drew with a pen, she can draw 8 hours a day. In VR, she can only work 3 hours a day, because your brain is so concentrated on the creation that you will spend 3 more times energy than reality. And after 3 hours, she was exhausted, in fact.
So that's it, the user becomes like a contributor to the work of art in the different example we show. And as JB was saying, is that for Pauline Dufour, the ultimate goal will be that the user, the spectator, can himself take photographies and generate his own art pieces through VR. So we were talking about the crossroad between arts, brands, and gaming, because basically we're working with Unreal Engine, which is like a software to create video games. And the more we are working in VR, the more we are developing interaction, and the more we are like learning mechanics who actually are the game mechanics of video games. So we are not game designers, but we would like to. So basically we are working on a first video game which will be released on Steam this winter, which is called Singularity Number 5. It's a first-person shooter where you shoot robots in a futuristic Paris controlled by LVMH. So we decided to use all the codes of the luxury and the art that we learn through the different projects to make a video games inspired by the luxury, the jewelry, and the luxury in general. So this is a small teaser, it's a total in-progress shot. So it's the first game we're working on, so basically we are still learning a lot of stuff, but for us it's a perfect opportunity to use all the purpose of VR, like working for events, working for products, working for brands.
About gaming, the only thing that change is that you not control one character on the screen, you are one of the character. And it will be the same thing for movies. We know that Technicolor is working on, they scan all the Hollywood stars in 3D, they get their voice, their tone of voice, and they know they are already prototyping movie scene in real time for next movies. For example, Spielberg for Ready Player One has prototyped a lot of these movie scenes in VR.
So here a few screenshots. The game is totally in progress, but it should be released in few months. So the purpose, again, is to make yourself a hero more than a user. So we work a lot about the superpower that can bring you and the different interactions you can develop inside an experience. You have to know that creating a game in VR is totally different than creating a classical video game. For example, the height of the buildings, you have to multiply it, because basically in a classical video games like a FPS, the doors you have in front of you, they are this high, like 1 meter stuff, and so you have to multiply certain of the different axes. There's a few rules and a few codes to adapt and to learn. That is the reason that for now most of the video games are not directly translated into VR experiences.
What is interesting about VR is that maybe you have heard about Beat Saber. It's the most successful game of VR. And what we see when we show videos of people is that it's a physical thing. It's not like playing on your sofa and you just moving and eating snack food. It's that you move your body. And I think it's really a new way of experiencing gaming.
So one of the huge problems we are facing in VR, as JB was saying before, it's the quality of the 3D. Because basically these are the artworks that we are making for the game, and for now it's impossible to reach such a quality in an Unreal Engine, but basically the technology is growing super fast. So in a few years, it will be, they said that in something like 15 years, in VR you will have the same quality as your eyes do, with the same resolution, the same effects. Right. But for now we're waiting and...
Yeah, for the moment it is 2K per eye. And we know that the goal, the objective is 8K per eye. And 8K per eye is the same quality as reality. And as we know, the brain believes what it is. The sight is 80% of your senses.
I forgot to say one thing when we were talking about the kids playing video games in the museum. You have to know that basically the kids under the age of 5, everything they lived in VR goes directly into the souvenir section of your brain. So basically, you can make them believe anything. So this can be dangerous, but this is also a way for you to see that this medium can be something really important and decisive in a near future. So that's it. We want the user to live with a memory with a simple flash. Talking about the brands before, you know that on social network, for example, on Instagram, you spend half of a second on each visual. To memorize a visual, you need 6 seconds. So basically, everything you see on Instagram every day, you forgot already. And in VR, you spend between 3 minutes and 15 minutes in an experience, so you can imagine how it's important for all the clients to focus on this new media. Even if the market, it is said that the market will really start in 2022 because of the quality of the devices, who for now are like a little bit disappointing. But you have to know that all the brands and clients we are working with are really focusing on VR because they see the big thing coming in the near future.
Just what's next. VR for the moment, it's a $2 billion investment per year. The chance that we have is that the main actors of VR is Facebook, Google, HTC, big companies, and we know that they already think of the post-mobile era. They know that we'll not stick to our mobile for the next 20 years. There is no device from history where you stay on the same device for the next 20 years. So they think that immersion, we can talk about immersion, it can be AR, VR, whatever you want, R, it's the next step of the digital world. So next year you will have a premium standalone headset that will be released. The first one is the Oculus Quest in February, I think. It will not be the same quality when you have a big desktop and an Oculus Rift, but the quality will be really better than the small headset that you have where you plug your mobile. Everybody was talking about the Apple device. We don't know exactly if it will be AR, VR, both modes. It will be next year or in 2 years. But what Apple knows, and we hope that Apple will do for VR and AR what they did for smartphone. If they launch the killing device, the mass market will follow. We also have a lot of Unreal updates that will optimize the quality, because with the success of Fortnite, they already gain, I don't know, something like $2 billion. We have updates every week with new capabilities and new functionalities. We also think that the quality will be improved when we have the 5G and because VR requests a lot of 3D complex computing. So with the cloud computing, it will also be a solution, we think.
One last word for those who saw Ready Player One. We have another problem in VR, is that basically when you take a headset, you're in front on a classic store, like a 2D store. And it's not really joyful or playful to access the different experiences because, by the way, there's not a lot of content yet. But what we see around us through Spielberg movies or even through Zuckerberg movies is that they are building like slowly hubs. So basically all the different VR experiences will be welcome into bigger VR spaces, what we call hubs. So it's the future of Oasis is something actually which is in development. Basically Facebook, they want to convert all your Facebook walls into rooms. This is a project they showed like already 2 years before I saw, and it's coming slowly.
In VR, we have to face a lot of criticism because the people say, I don't want to be like in Ready Player One, to live in virtuality instead of reality.
It's too late.
But when you consult your mobile 300 times a day, do you live in reality or virtuality? But we think that the quality of the experience that you will have on virtuality will be 1,000 better than the quality of the experience that you have on your
because
mobile.
Everybody's disappointed about the headset and the quality of the devices. You have to know that us too, we are the first to be disappointed of the actual quality of the devices. But it's not like a product like a smartphone which is launched and who's going to work in 2 months, you know. It's like you have to know that VR, basically, it's evolving super fast. If you compare to the genesis of the console gaming, for example, you can see that it's evolving 2 times faster. The fact is we became too impatient, but us, we focus more on the content than on the device for now.
But if you take the last thing on the iPhone, from the release of the iPhone 1 and you use your mobile every day, it took 10 years. It was the same for the e-commerce, and VR, it will be the same. So we can say we are at the year 4, and we think that in 6 years, it will be maybe the biggest market of the world. Thanks.
Thank you.